Hi, everybody. I hope you can see me and hear me okay? If you all can see me, could you just give me a thumbs up or write in the chat? Thank you, Aloma. Welcome. So this is the second workshop I'm doing for the year. My plan is to do a free workshop every month to support special needs parents, and to give you a place where you could review what life looks like to you and see if you could build some skills, adjust the way that you think about things, respond to things, and the systems you put in place so that what's a challenging life for each of us as a special needs parent gets easier to deal with. We can't stop the challenges, but we can outfit ourselves with more skills and more resilience so that we could make it an easier journey. And I think that's what you all are interested in, which is why you're here. So first of all, I want to say thanks for coming, because I thought for a moment I might be only teaching to a blank screen and putting up a recording. It certainly feels much nicer to actually do a workshop with people. So I appreciate you all, David and Angel and Aloma and Nikki. Thanks for coming today. The first workshop that I did in January actually ran way over time, more than the hour, because I had involved the participants and asked them to tell me about themselves and their families. But we had about 20 participants, and so it took more than a half hour to hear everybody's story. So today I'm learning from the experience, and I'm going to ask you all, if you're sharing, to please share in the chat, so that everybody gets to read your shares and your insights. You get to feel supported because people can support you there, but I get to stay on track to give you the value you came here to get. This session will end at 8 p.m. Trinidad time, so it's 1 hour long. So let me share screen and we'll start. Now you're going to see some slides, and I've tried to make the slides very, very specific and simple because I think you all want points that help you to understand and help you to improve what you experience. And I don't want to spend a whole lot of time just talking. I want to spend the time helping you all to actually spot the areas where you want to make changes and helping you to grow your skill to manage those things. How does that sound? Let me know in the chat. Does it sound aligned with what you want from the session? All right, great. So let me share this screen. We are recording because a recording will go up in my special needs parent space, which is our free community to help other parents. So at any point, if you want to see it again, it's going to be there. Okay, are you seeing the screen, everybody? All right. So the name of the program that we're about to jump into is Reduce Stress with Better Boundaries. A lot of the stresses we live with every day don't have to be as massively stressful. Sometimes it's about how we tell people how much is enough and how much is too much for us. And so as we start to see the areas where stress starts to come in, we can start to remember, this is what triggers me. This is what stresses me. How can I put some barriers up, or how can I tell people that there are limits? Many of us feel that it's hard to set those limits because it comes across as rude. But you know what? We have to choose. How long are we going to let life be hard for us because we are afraid of being perceived as rude? There are ways that we can set our boundaries without being rude, while being firm, while being clear about what we need to function well. So that's what we are about to step into. The goals of the workshop are to not control other people, but really to look out for ourselves. First, start with understanding that this is not about being some dragon to everybody else. Don't be afraid that that's what's going to happen. It's about finally holding a little bit of protective space for you, putting yourself as an important person too. So defining and protecting what we need to care for ourselves. And in that vein, what we're going to cover is understanding boundaries and why they matter, recognizing where our boundaries are weak, learning a few tools and scripts, things we could say, to help us to maintain healthy boundaries, and to help you all learn how to say the things you might want to say. We actually going to have some circumstances and situations described that may resemble the ones you have in your real life, and practice how we might set better boundaries, enforce those boundaries, stand up for ourselves, take care of ourselves, be gentler to ourselves. Right? I hope that resonates with you all. So while I'm sharing screen, I cannot see the chat. So Nikki, my friend, is here. Nikki, if you see something in the chat that really needs to be brought up, could you just let us know while we're doing the training?
Yep, can do.
Thank you so much. So I'm going to try to include you all at every single step in this process. So let's start with getting to know where you are with boundaries. In the chat, tell me what's one area where you think your boundaries are being tested right now.
Marcia, we do have a question from David. What is self-regulation and how stress can be reduced with better boundaries?
Good. So David, you're actually going to hear a lot about how boundaries and weak boundaries cause stress to go up. And so as we start understanding how those weak boundaries cause stress to go up, you'll understand how deepening or tightening up your boundaries, enforcing your boundaries will get stress to go down, right? So self-regulation is a separate thing. And self-regulation is about starting to observe patterns in your behavior, patterns in your emotion, because you might feel stressed, and that stress builds and builds when you're under pressure until you get to a point where the stress gets so big that you might have a meltdown, that you might need to, you feel you're going crazy, you can't handle the noise anymore, you can't handle people judging you or questioning you anymore. And you run away and you go to a room and you want to stay away from people for a long time. I don't know if that's your particular experience, that's mine. So with self-regulation, it's understanding how much is too much. What are the things that cause me to reach a point where everything feels like too much? And what does overload feel like to me, look like when I'm overloaded? How do I lose the ability to control or regulate myself or to function well. And then you ask yourself, so what can I do to not reach that place? So I'm excited to say that I actually developed a small worksheet that I'm going to be putting out within the next week or two to help with identifying what triggers our children to have meltdowns and so on. So it is about their regulation. And so if you have a challenge with regulating yourself, this could also be a useful worksheet for you because you can apply it to you instead of a child. And that's going to be available free. So just keep looking out at my Facebook profile and you'll see when it's available, and you could just go put your email address in, I'll email it across to you and you'll receive it. Okay, so that's coming soon, and it should help with the regulation side of things and recognizing the patterns that tell you a meltdown is coming or loss of self-regulation is coming. Nikki, anything else? Did anybody tell us what areas they think their boundaries are being tested in? Doesn't seem so. Okay, well, I'll be pointing out some areas.
Sorry, I didn't realize my mic was off.
Oh,
I was yapping away. I took myself off camera. I've been painting all day. I'm sorry, guys. I'm really not camera ready. No, David was just saying that for him, programs with special needs and special needs people are worried and compromised as a result of the very terrible political situation in the United States. And Aloma says morning routines.
right. I have some direct experience with Aloma's situation. And what Aloma, I'll just briefly let everybody know where you are because I know you're open about it. Aloma is an ADHD parent with a child with ADHD. And so it's pretty hard to get her morning routine to work because she's trying to regulate herself while her child is still so little that she also has regulation of her child to manage. And she has a job to get to in a certain time, and she has to drop her child off and get everything ready. So it is chaotic and really, really demanding on her. And she is a superstar because she has been learning and learning and learning new ways that she could implement to make life a little bit easier, a little more structured. And the more structure she has for herself and for her child, the better it's working. So boundaries are going to really help as well, Aloma, which is why I'm happy that you're here. I did not, because I tend to forget, I did not introduce myself. So I'm going to do that now. My name is Dr. Marsha Nathai Balkisoon. I am not a medical doctor. I have a PhD in industrial engineering. I have training as a parent skills master trainer. And I have many, many trainings in education and training and brain-based learning and other areas like that, that I got just out of my own interest. Interestingly, many of them were before I ever had a special needs child myself. 13 years ago, my little daughter was born, second child that I had. And by the time she was 8 months old, she had become brain injured to the point where she was vegetative and she was not expected to live. If she did live, they did not expect her to be able to do anything. Her name is Emma, and she is going to be 13 later this month. And she is the brightest light I ever did see. She brings a lot of joy to me, but we also have a lot of stress. She is still brain injured and bedridden. She has heart issues. She has 2 dislocated hips, and the list goes on. But I'm learning every single day more ways to make it better for her and better for us. And it also put me on the path of saying, well, if I'm learning these lessons because it's a dark, scary place, then there must be more reason for me to share it with others And that's why I made it actually the work that I'm doing, so that I try to use what I learn to help other people as well. So let's go on and actually talk about boundaries. The first thing I want you all to see is that quote at the bottom. Healthy boundaries don't push people away. They teach them how to engage with us. They teach people how to engage with us in a way that is sustainable and respectful. Our boundaries tell people, if I'm going to continue interacting with you, there are certain behaviors that won't be acceptable, and there are certain behaviors that will be acceptable. And in the same way that we hold ourselves to certain standards when we talk to others, we ask people to treat us with those standards as well. So what all of that is to say that boundaries are not selfish. It often feels that if we ask people to pause and listen to what we need, that's selfish. So from the outset, let's agree that it's not selfish to want to enjoy a life more, to want to not have stress and judgment and mistreatment being the way that we feel as we interact with others. We set boundaries to protect our energy, to improve our mental space, to avoid burnout and weakness, and to create healthier relationships with the people in our life, in our immediate family, in our extended family, in our wider social and community, in our work. And also it's going to help us to show up better for our children. If we don't set good boundaries, what happens is we start getting really, really tired, feeling like nobody's hearing us or caring about us, feeling resentment to other people, and so we have strained relationships, and even starting to lose touch with who we are. Do I even know myself anymore? Because nobody interacts with me as I want to show up. I always show up the way they need, as opposed to the way I am. I wonder if that resonates with you all. That's a concept called mask wearing. Do I have to make myself into a different version of me in order for people to accept me? Or have I found a way to show up as me and people respect me for me? That's the better option. And sometimes it takes time to get there, but you can get there. Right? So boundaries are like guardrails on a winding road. You don't notice boundaries when they're doing their job. But if you don't have guardrails, if you don't have boundaries, it's easy to get off course, run off the road, and crash. So I want to know, tell me in the chat, have you ever said yes to something and immediately regretted saying yes to it? Have you said yes to somebody, a family member, and you really didn't want to, but you found yourself agreeing to what they wanted? Have you let somebody push you into doing something and you regretted it, but you didn't know how to say no? Have you been at work and they gave you something at the last minute to do and you wanted to say, I have something else that I need to do, but you found yourself agreeing and then you resent it? Drop a yes, and if you want, you can tell me what you regretted saying yes to, if you want. What happened? Anybody answering?
Yeah, Aloma is definitely a yes. And
Put it in the chat, please. Anybody else? What's Aloma saying?
She just said yes.
Okay.
I'm going to take myself off camera for just a minute. Oh my gosh, I look horrendous. But this is what you get.
Well, exactly. You don't need to show up with masks, right? This is you, and we welcome
this
you.
is what you get.
Yeah.
But so it's something that I do all the time, Marcia. I think it's interesting that you mentioned that. As recently as, a couple of weeks ago. So but I'm learning this really cool word. It's only got 2 letters in it. No.
We have that on the list of skills to learn today.
Practice saying it with me now. No.
Okay.
Or if you want to do it more with more flair, I am disinclined to acquiesce to your request, aka no.
So if you all want to clap our co-facilitator, Nikki, now is the time.
I
Yep.
stole that from Pirates of the Caribbean. It's one of my favorite lines. I am disinclined to acquiesce to your request. It means no. All right,
All right.
I'm done.
So I saw David's hand up, but David, could you just put any comment in the chat? Because I've learned that once I start having the discussions by mouth, we end up not getting to do the things you came to learn. So please put them in the chat and we'll make sure to air what you have to share. Okay, I want you to look at these and see which ones are red flags for you. If your boundaries need work, you may have experienced some of these. Have you felt drained, exhausted, or resentful toward people or toward situations? Have you found yourself saying yes when really in your heart of hearts you want to say no? Have you felt guilty for taking time to look after yourself, as if everybody else and everything else is worth more than you? Have you been avoiding certain people or avoiding certain situations because you knew uncomfortable things would happen when you're there, instead of facing those situations, facing those people and telling those people, okay, there's a limit here. And I don't appreciate this treatment. I don't appreciate the way you speak to me, etc., etc. I have a story from my own life that I'll tell you all if time allows as we go through. Hi, Radha. I see Radha has joined us.
Hi, good night.
Radha, you missed a little, but we're really getting to the most important part of our training after now. So you haven't missed much. And
Okay.
this is being recorded to share in our special needs parent space, the free group. So you can always watch the whole thing again or catch what you missed.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. And sometimes you want to say no, but you feel you have to tell them, no, let me explain why. Or I feel so guilty saying what my stance is that I over explain, or I feel attacked, or I feel like I'm not a good person for not agreeing to what people expect me to do. Do any of these, sorry.
Sorry, Marcia, I didn't mean to interrupt. Aloma's saying that she always feels she's underperforming or messing up.
Okay.
That leads to people pleasing. And
Right.
she makes herself small at work because undermanaged ADHD. I guess because they don't quite know how to and this happens in a lot of workplaces. They don't really know what ADHD people need, right, in order to perform well. And yeah, I guess that's a different topic, but
Yeah.
I can understand
Well,
that.
there are definite overlaps, right? Sometimes people are aware, but it takes effort to change our systems to meet the needs of special needs people. And some people say that's just too much. I'm not prepared. They have to adapt. This is the way we work here. And what we're saying is that and there's that word, we want equity for people. Everybody's not equal. People come with different situations and challenges. And we want to create systems that support us in our differences, right? So which of these do you relate the most to? The first, second, third, fourth, or fifth? Just put your number down in the chat. If it's all five, just write all five. If it's a particular one that's really the hardest one for you, just drop your number in. There are other things that you might see as signs. You might feel trapped in certain relationships or trapped in certain responsibilities. You might feel guilty. You might constantly put other people's needs ahead of your own. There's yours, Aloma. The situation is about making yourself shrink and not shine as bright and be smaller, and just let everything else around you at work, everyone else around you at work, take priority over you. And so that might lead you to feel resentful, feel taken for granted, feel exhausted, or feel overwhelmed, for example. Am I hitting the nail on the head there, Aloma? So I have a little self-check exercise.
Yes, exhausted from all, she says. And David was asking what programs are available for boundary control. Well, I think you're in one right now, David.
Yeah, I don't have a lot of programs. I do coaching with individuals as well as group coaching, but I'm also doing some free training every single month from now on. So this is the first free boundaries training that I've structured. And if you go to my podcast, which is the Special Needs Parent podcast, there are free episodes in there where I talked about boundaries as well. So you'll get value from that as well, David, if you want. So there's a little self-check exercise that I want to take you through. There are 5 questions here. It's just short. But as you listen to these 5 questions, I want you to take note of if your answer to each is a yes or a no. And I want to see how many yeses you'll end up answering by the end of the 5 questions. Okay, ready? I'm going slow. First question. Do I feel guilty when I prioritize my own needs? Yes or no? You don't have to type it in the chat. Just keep track, okay? Second question. Have I agreed to something recently out of obligation rather than desire? Have I agreed to something that I didn't want to do, but I did it because I felt forced to? I felt pressured to. I felt guilty enough that I did it, even though I didn't want to. Yes or no? Third question. Do I feel like people expect me to always say yes? Yes or no? Do you feel like people expect you to always say yes? Always be the one who adapts, who helps out, who shows up? Yes or no? Fourth question. Have I let my health, my rest, or my personal goals take a back seat to everything else? You all understand what I'm asking there? Have I put myself last behind everything else? Yes or no? Last question, number 5. Do I feel resentment towards certain people, relationships, or situations? Yes or no? No judgment. This is just how you feel. Okay, we must first see how we feel and be honest about that. And then based on the answers, we could decide if we want to change things. So how many yeses did you answer out of those 5 questions? If you said yes to 3 or more of those questions, your boundaries might need strengthening. So if you want, tell me how many yeses you got in the chat. You don't have to, but you're welcome to. Any answers in the chat, Nikki?
Nope, not yet.
Okay.
I
All
had
right.
4, in case.
You had
Aloma
4?
just said yes. Yeah, Aloma just said yes. Unfortunately, all of them.
Okay. Well, you're in the right
And
place,
Radha
right?
said 2 of them.
Sorry, who said 2?
Radha.
Okay, great. So we are in the right place. Everything doesn't just change because we want it to change. Sometimes we have to make some effort. This is not convenient to come to a training program at 7 p.m. But you all are here because you know that there are things you want to learn, things you want to change, right? And the first step to change is acknowledging what you want to change, which is what you've just started to do. And then learning how and starting to put those into practice. So why don't we just spend a little time celebrating that we chose to show up for ourselves for this training? When we're on Zoom, this is our celebration. We just, woo! So celebrate that you showed up to change things. Okay, let's go on. Now let's talk about the actual boundaries that might be getting crossed, that we might need to clarify for ourselves, or that we might need to enforce. You all can give me feedback as we go along with the little symbols. Nikki, you want to guide them for how you got your little celebration to show?
Oh, so if you're doing it in the chat, you see that little smiley face there underneath where it says you to everyone. You just hit that little smiley face and you get a couple of little things that pop up. If you go to the right of it, I think there's a few more choices. And then at the bottom of the screen, if you see the react button, and you click on that and you get a couple of different reactions. So I just sent a heart. See, a heart is attached to my name. So if you want to react that way, or if you have a question, please feel free to put your hand up. So again, hit that reaction button. And there's a button that actually says raise your hand. So you can raise your hand, and then Marcia will know that you have a question that you want to ask out loud. And then you can lower your hand as well.
All right. So now we start with the real training as opposed to taking stock of where you are. There are 4 kinds of boundaries. There are boundaries on your time, on your emotion, on your physical self, your body, your well-being, your health physically, and there are boundaries on your mental state. Okay? So I gave you some examples here, but we're going in the next slide to actually dive into some scenarios, some situations, and start building some skill in you. So time boundaries say things like, I'm sorry, I can't commit to this right now. See, this is like Nikki. You want to say no, but you don't just say no. You say, I can't commit to this right now. I have something else that I'm booked to do right now, so I'm not available. Right? Emotional boundaries might sound like, well, that person wants to shout at me. I'm not responsible for calming them down. That's their job. I'm not responsible for their emotions. Whose emotions are you responsible for? Tell me in the chat. There's only one person that you have control over, and that's yourself. The only person whose emotions you actually can control would be yourself. Now, that's a hard place to be as a special needs parent because your child might be having meltdowns. Your child might be really emotionally triggered. And that's a hard thing for us to deal with when our child is having a tough time and we can't control their emotions. We learn ways to calm them, sure, but we can't guarantee that they always will behave how we want them to behave in a moment. Physical boundaries might include a statement like, I need some personal space. Don't come straight up to my face and talk straight up in my face. That makes me feel pressured. Give me some physical space. Step back a little bit. Yeah? Or, you know what? This gathering, there are just too many people. There's too much noise. Emotionally, I'm feeling stressed, but I need some physical space. So I'm going to go outside and take a walk. Or I'm going to go to my room and calm down. Those are things that we do to protect our physical boundaries. And then, yeah.
Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt. David
Please
is
do.
just asking how are time boundaries, how they differ from physical or other boundaries. So
We
he just
have
had a question.
actual scenarios coming on the next slide, David, to make it really clear for you. And the last one, mental boundaries, might sound like, well, just because the boss has a certain opinion doesn't mean I always have to have the same opinion. I have the right to my own opinions. I have the right to make my own decisions. If I'm hired to do a job and I have to do the things the company asks, I can still be of a different opinion, but do the job I have to do. Right? I don't always have to force myself to agree just because the boss says so. So sometimes we learn to say, well, sure, I'll do what the boss says, but I'm going to keep my opinion to myself. So let's take a look at some of the weak spots that you may have. When you think about the struggle with boundaries that you most often have, does it usually revolve around your family, your interaction with friends, or with people in a social circle? Is it around work and commitments that you have there? Or is your biggest boundary struggle one of self-care, honoring yourself and caring for yourself? Tell me in the chat, which is your hardest one out of all? Okay, I just was able to get the chat to work for me. And so I'm seeing Nikki saying that her weak spots differ depending on the situation. And Radha says self-care is the biggest boundary struggle. Radha, I think self-care is my biggest one as well. So let's go to the next slide because here are our scenarios. Let's start understanding what these boundary issues might look like. When we interact with family, here are some sample scenarios. Okay, Aloma says work is a big boundary issue for her. It triggers her a lot. And then self-care. So if we look at family, for example, for a special needs parent, many special needs parents tell me, my family doesn't respect the choices I make as a parent. For example, you might say, I don't want my child to eat this snack because this snack gives them a sugar rush and they already have ADHD and they will not settle. They won't be grounded and it'll be really hard to control them mentally, emotionally, and physically. So I'm giving you a beginner level scenario, an easy one, and then I'm telling you a harder one. So if the family doesn't respect your parenting choices, when you're not around, the grandparent might give them the snack anyway. What might you all say if the grandparent is sneaking snacks to them? Anybody wants to try? For this one, you all get to open the mic and tell me. What might you say to the grandparent who sneaks a snack to your child?
Sorry, I have a cold again. Self-care, right?
Okay.
Um, I would say to the grandparents, we both care about the grandchild, and we know that is one of the snacks that really bring you joy and stuff to share with maybe nostalgia, but you also don't want to cause any harm to your child. It may not affect me have not have affected you as a child. It affects her in X, Y, or Z way. And I don't want to, upset you, but here are some snacks that you could offer her that will be healthy for her, but also fun as well for her, and she will get to enjoy.
Okay. So you
That's what I
might
would
say
say.
something, Aloma, like, I know you love Emily and you want to give them a treat. You want them to be
Mhm.
happy and they like this snack. But I also know that neither of us wants them to struggle. And when we give them this snack, it stops them from enjoying their day. It takes away their ability to control themselves. So we really need to stick to this plan to never give Emily this snack. So you come from a place of strength, you show some empathy. I understand why you want to do it. I understand you want to share this favorite snack you have. I understand that you used to enjoy doing this with me when I was a child. And you want to do it with your grandchild, but she responds differently from me. And so, out of that love, I'm asking you if you could just be on board with me. Right? Now, sometimes it becomes advanced in that they say, no, I'm not going to listen, and I'm going to do whatever I want when Emily comes to my place. And then that becomes a harder boundary that you have to set. Listen, it's not about what you want, it's about what's best for Emily. And that's when you put your foot down. So an example of an advanced one, in addition to that, is if a family member ignores your medical guidelines. So I had a parent on the podcast some weeks ago, and she said her husband, they are separated or divorced, and her husband lives in a different state. And when she sends the child to stay with the dad doesn't believe that the child is sick and does not give her medication for weeks. And so this child now is at risk for things like seizure. Yeah? So that's a serious breach when it comes to ignoring guidelines. It's not just, I would like you to. It's the parent saying, I don't think your diagnosis is right. I will not administer this medication And so when the child ended up getting sick, she had to get on a plane and go there because they didn't know how to give the medication. They had never learned. She had to go there and save her child. What do you think you'd say in that situation? Obviously, you're going to have to stiffen up your spine and get really strong in your language and in your energy. This is aggressive now, is your whole tone. And so you're going to say something like, I've noticed that despite my requests, you keep making different choices for Emily. That is not okay. That is dangerous. That could even be illegal, depending on the things that they're breaching, okay? If this continues, I'm going to change how I allow her to visit you. And that may mean that I may have to go to court. That may mean that I have to lodge some sort of report medically or to the police. This is how massive the issue could blow up, right? So that's to show you the difference between easy and advanced with the same scenario. The second scenario is when we talk about school or therapist interactions, and this could be medical professionals as well, where they overstep and they say, well, we are the experts and we're just not going to listen to what your opinion is as a parent or what your needs are as a parent. So an easy one is the therapist wants to do something, wants your child to do something, and you say, well, you know, my child has a hard time with that, this hurts her. And the therapist says, well, I'm the therapist, I know best, so we're going to do it anyway. How would you deal with that?
So, Marcia, it's very funny that you're addressing this right now because it looks like Aloma is having similar issues with her grandmother for her daughter.
Okay.
So you're right on point is all I'm going to say, but Aloma is wondering what alternatives you have.
Aloma, do you want to open your mic and tell us a little bit about the issue?
Sure. The grandma gives her her phone, right? Which it has unfiltered YouTube access, where I don't allow her to have digital devices on tap YouTube. I usually, um, if she on the phone or using an app, I would just pass it to the TV, so I know if she tried to switch out of an app.
Right, so this is for her safety. You want to see what she's immersing
Yeah.
herself in, right?
Yeah, but
Okay.
I know grandma not gonna pay any attention. It's her YouTube, which has her adult content with the algorithm gonna send to her,
Yes.
you know. So what alternative? Because grandma will give it to her because she just wanted to stay quiet, right?
So
Just
there is an option in that you might be able to see on a phone that they allow a child safety profile to be created on the same phone. And if that is a setting that you could learn to set, then grandma would switch to that child safety profile and then pass it over to her.
okay. But
So
then
you go in places like
but
accessibility in the settings, and you see if there are limits you could place, or if there's a particular code that has to be typed in, so that she is limited to only using the safe apps that will be installed on grandma's phone. And anytime she wants to go to things outside of her profile's permissions, she'd have to type that code, which she won't know. So you'll have some research to do to find out how to do that.
yeah, because the issue with that is she not being able to get calls even from me if I'm calling or anyone with the child profile.
All right, so then there's
I can
a
remove
second
myself.
option, which is that you get a low price device for her. It can be a phone or it could be something like a Kindle device or something. because Kindles are relatively cheap and they come with child safety profiles. So she can have her device, it won't be grandma's phone, and it's only the apps that you put on there and the limits you set. There could also be time limits that you set as well.
And that's enough so big, that's enough. Okay, well, again, I will have to bear with it pretty well because finances kind of limited with
I
grandma
understand.
and I am concerned. So
Yeah.
I was going to say, but yes, I did go through the double profile setting. Is that the issue that it doesn't allow the child to it doesn't allow the phone. It goes like on do not disturb and you don't get any calls or messages. Not to say that
Okay.
Vanessa are going to yeah, not to say that Vanessa are going to um she going to answer my call if I call and she gonna answer the
Right.
call, she just hang up.
Understood, Aloma. So, so for the scenario 2, basically you'd be telling the therapist, I value your expertise, I value your input, but I would like to understand more about why you are insisting on this. This needs to be something that we both agree on together. Because I see how it affects my child and I'm concerned about it. I'm going to be open to your opinion, but I expect you to also consider mine. The second scenario, which is the harder one, is that the school pushes an education plan. IEP stands for Individualized Education Plan. So the school is saying your child has certain special needs, and this is the way we're going to treat with your child, but you don't agree with it. So what would you do to respond to that? And here is what I would say. I appreciate your perspective as the educator in charge, but I know my child, and I know my child's behaviors and triggers. We need a plan that truly supports his or her needs. And if we can't find a solution here, I'm going to have to escalate this to the principal to get some resolution. Or I'm going to have to go to somebody at a higher level because trying to work with you all is not bringing resolution for my child. Those are some of the hard things we have to do as parents. You all know this. It's very uncomfortable. And one of the things you might find yourself having to say to them is, this is not about me being stubborn to you, being unkind to you, being rude to you. This is about me providing for my child what she needs. And if you can get them to see that, to understand that, it becomes an easier transaction, an easier discussion. But it never is a straightforward one for us. It takes a lot of guts. It's scary to stand up to people. Two more scenarios, and let me do it quickly because we only have 10 minutes left. Our own friends might be insensitive. One of the ones is that somebody who may not want to listen to us might say, oh, you're just so strong, or I don't know how you do it. And they kind of shove aside our experience and move on to talk about something else. And if you find that you have friends like that, you might want to say something like, I know you mean well when you say this to me, but what I really need is support. What I really need is someone to listen to what I'm facing and not to brush it off, not to shut me up and move on. I need you to listen. And so I'm going to tell you some more there. But the harder version of that is, you might start to say, my child had a seizure yesterday, or my child had this huge meltdown in the middle of the school. And your friend might say, oh girl, my child had this yesterday, as a response to what you started to say. Your friend keeps comparing their child's struggles to yours when their child may not be a special needs child. And so you might say something like, I've noticed that when I share something tough, you try to relate by comparing. That makes me feel unheard. When you speak like that, I don't feel that you really are listening to me or seeing me. I don't feel cared for. Can we just sit with what I am sharing and what I'm going through? That is a very brave thing to do. Most of us stay quiet. We feel resentful in ourselves. We feel hurt. But we don't face our friend and say, stop, this is not the way I want you to be a friend to me. When you say words like that, you are finally being a friend to yourself. So we're talking about your own boundaries with yourself and then your boundaries with your friend. Now, you may find that your friend may not be willing to change. And if your friend is not willing to show up for you and see you and really treat with you in your discomfort, if your friend is not willing to also feel uncomfortable while talking with you and they try to brush it off, it may not be the right friend. And you may have cultivated friendships where people take more from you than they give to you. And you need to think about, do I have the right kinds of friends? Do my friends genuinely care for me? Sometimes we have to choose, we have to recognize which friends to distance ourselves from because they aren't really there for us. Right? Nikki is giving some tips and I'm going to let Nikki say it. Nikki, could you briefly say what your tip is?
Yeah, so David was asking what are the time limits and restrictions that can be set at devices? And Aloma had suggested YouTube, which I think is a great idea. You could also consider ChatGPT. There's a free version of ChatGPT. The reason I know this is because my sister-in-law, she uses ChatGPT a lot because she's got some health issues going on. And she's getting some really great answers.
All right.
Ultimately, though, you are the parent or the guardian of your child and you get to set. So exactly what Marcia is saying, you get to say what the boundaries are.
All right, my friends. So we have 5 minutes left, and so I'm going to switch back into our scenario 4. I hope these scenarios are helpful to explore certain things and to give you all ways that you could address them, help you to see how to phrase them. Of course, all of this stuff is going to be available for you all as a recording in the group. And tomorrow I'm going to put up some extra resources in the group, a little cheat sheet for you all, and some other resources to help in addition to this training. Because I didn't have enough time to do a 4-hour training here, but I can give you some additional resources for those who want more support. So you'll find that in the group. Scenario 4, you might be the one overstepping your boundaries. And actually, that's where it starts. All those other scenarios were because we didn't clarify our boundaries, and so people are overstepping. Or we didn't enforce our boundaries, so people keep overstepping. So actually, scenario 4 is where we should be starting. Do I even know my own boundaries? Have I actually asked myself what I need? Have I looked at how I behave and what melts me down and what triggers me and what stresses me? Because if I see what stresses me, if I recognize the patterns that bring on overwhelm, then I understand here is the fence that when I cross this, I have a meltdown. When I cross this, I feel so exhausted. When I cross this, I start shouting like a mad lady. That's mine. I get kind of so mad that I quarrel. So if I trip off when the stress gets to this point, then my boundary should be before that point. And I should see when I'm sliding toward that boundary. So I say, mash brakes, stop. How do I regulate myself? That's what David was asking. How do I spot when I'm on the slope and slide in toward dysregulation? So easy ones would be, I constantly forget to eat. I don't brush my teeth till 2. I actually write about that in my book, Lighting the Path. For years, I brushed my teeth for the first time at 2 p.m. every day. Late, because I was seeing to my child from 6 a.m. and I would only find a minute for me at 2 p.m. I would not have eaten breakfast. I would not have eaten lunch. I would not have changed out of my nightie. I would be soaked from giving her a bath in my nightie still. And then I'd realize, ooh, it's 2 p.m. Sean is about to come home in an hour. And I'm still looking like if I now woke up. And I'm hungry and I'm irritable, right? Because I didn't eat or take a break. I didn't even brush my teeth. So, and I don't take a rest. So what do we do if we notice that we poor at self-care? What do we say to ourselves? Just like we talk to people about boundaries we want to set with them, we talk to ourselves. And so what I say is, skipping lunch today will not make things easier, Marsh. It will make you more cranky. It will make you more overwhelmed. It will stress you out more. So you need to take care of yourself so that you can take care of Emma. And I prepare things the night before. While Sean is seeing to Em, I make sure there's something quick I could eat. So at least I could take 5 minutes sitting next to her on the bed and eat something. It's better than eating nothing. The harder version of overstepping our own boundaries is one that Aloma does and one that I did for years and years. Overcommitting to other people's demands at work or in other like community or social settings. And so what your advanced response should be is saying to yourself again, hey, I'm doing too much. It's time to step back. I really don't want to do this. I don't want to say yes to this. I don't have time for this. I have other priorities. I have something else on the schedule for when I get home. I cannot agree to take this work home, even if the boss is pressuring me. And so saying no does not make me a bad worker. Saying no does not make me a bad parent. It makes me a better person. If I don't run out, if I don't run on fumes, I'm able to show up for my child better. Would you agree? So I choose the things that I use my energy for. And that means knowing all the things I have to do and then saying which ones of these are most important. I did not say which ones of these are most urgent, because we often chase the things that screech the loudest for attention. They take up all our time and we never get to the important things like seeing about our health. Or in my case, like brushing my teeth. Simple things that I never made time for because everybody else had demands that were more important in my mind than myself. Yeah? So the question I have for you at this point is, what's one thing that you are going to say no to this week?
Marcia, do you mind if I just add to that? So
Yes.
I just had a really big aha.
Okay.
And I know we're going a little over time, so I'll make it quick.
So before
But-
you say it, everybody, it is just after 8. I might be finishing in about 10 minutes. Now, if you need to leave, feel free to leave, knowing that I will finish the recording and put it up in the Facebook group so you can catch the rest. But we are still interacting. So if you have the ability to stay 10 more minutes, I'd be ever so grateful because we have some more interaction with you all planned. Nikki, go ahead.
So the aha that I just had was I literally had a conversation like this with my daughter today. I am focused on painting this apartment and getting it done and finished. And she came to me and she said, you know what, Mom, I feel burnt out and I either have to not come tomorrow or not help you today, but I'm feeling like burnt out and I need to take some time for me. And I had this attitude of, well, you really should push through because isn't this important to you? And so it may not necessarily be that you're saying no to somebody, you're saying no to your to-do list. Because my to-do list is always this long. And thank you for this because I had the realization that I was pushing my to-do list onto my daughter and she was telling me what she needed. And I got upset with her and said,
Yeah.
hey, like, you know, this doesn't fly.
Now,
We
let
need to
me
get this
just
done.
give you a further insight to that. So when she says you're pushing your to-do list on me, again, you with your boundaries might then say, oh, I'm a terrible person. And you might start beating yourself up for that.
Actually, I just got mad.
Right. And so there are two things. Sometimes we feel so judged that we reflected back defensively and we get mad with the person giving us a message we need to receive. She's not responsible for your reaction to her setting boundaries. So you get to experience it from the side of the person that boundaries are being clarified with, right? But we are talking about how you actually phrase your own boundaries and say it to others. And people will react like that. Some people will say, you don't get to tell me how to behave. And the answer is, no, I don't get to tell you how to behave, but I get to tell you what I'll accept. I'll get to tell you what's acceptable to me because my job is to look out for what I can cope with and what I'm willing to deal with. And that starts with the way people talk with me. Don't belittle me. Don't curse at me. I've had bosses who did these things.
Mm-hmm.
Don't make a move on me when I'm in work. I had somebody who did that as a boss too, right? How do you respond? Now, I could get violent. I could get scared. Or I could square my shoulders, look at the person and say, you're crossing a line. And when it comes to my interactions at work, here's how it works. If you cross that line again, I'll be going somewhere else to report this. You hear the change in my tone of voice when I have that conversation. You know that change in tone of voice because you've used it with your children. You say the same thing 300 million times, but then your voice changes and suddenly they listen. Or I must say it 3 times and only on the 3rd time does that child ever listen. That's my son. I must say it 2 times first. The 3rd time is when he listens. Right? He's 18. He's done this for 15 years. I am to blame. I trained him to not listen those 2 times because I didn't set better boundaries and say, when I speak once, I mean it.
Yeah.
Right?
Thanks. Yeah.
So
okay.
These are your takeaway lists. So there's a cheat sheet that I'll give you all in the group tomorrow as well. But this is just a little peek into some of the cheat sheet things. To stay calm and stand firm on your boundaries. Somebody crosses your boundaries, you start feeling yourself getting stressed, melting down, pause before you react, so that you don't bare your teeth and jump on them and rip them to shreds, so that you don't overreact, so that you don't start crying and all the other things that we could react as, so that we don't hide, so that we don't silence ourselves, because all of these are some of the reactions we may have. Instead, take a deep breath. And in that breath time, tune in. What am I feeling? What do I need? Now let me respond. A much more measured and centered response. And you come from your true self to respond. You stand up for what you believe and what you need. Use I statements. So you don't say, you always put all your stuff on me. You all are always at the end of the workday saying, I need a last minute help. Will you do this tonight? I'm fed up with the way you always put all the pressure on me. If you talk to your boss or your teammate that way, it puts them on the defensive. So we frame it from the I. I have some plans today that I can't get out of. Or I actually volunteered to help the team out the last 5 times that things came up at the last minute. And I'm recognizing that we have 5 members on the team. So I'm going to bow out today and allow somebody else on the team to step up and do this. Do you see how I've just said, you all have been pressuring me without saying you all have been pressuring me? Do you see how I've given them evidence so that they can't make me feel guilty? Because I've shown that I've consistently showed up. And now I'm saying, I want to respect you all and your competence. I'm really grateful you all trust me, but now I'm going to trust you all in turn. So which one of you is going to say yes today? No guilt on my part. I look them in their eye, which takes guts, but it first takes me respecting my needs. When I say yes to somebody else's demand that I don't want to say yes to, when I say yes to them, I'm saying no to me. And I am changing that. It's time for me to start saying yes to me. That's what boundaries is about. So I can say, I need to do what's best for my family. I have another commitment. Or I don't always have to tell them why. My personal time is my personal time. So I can say, sorry, I'm not available today. There is no reason. I don't have to give you a reason always. Sometimes I may choose to, but this is my personal time, so I don't have to explain it to you. Oh, well, that's the third one. You don't owe long justifications. Or you could just not react. Take that deep breath, calm yourself down, and just say, no, sorry, that doesn't work for me. The hardest part is that bit in the brackets. Then be silent. I don't have to feel so nervous that I chatter on. I don't have to put that person at ease or explain it away. I can leave it unsolved and let the other person fill the gap with the action, the explanation, the apology, the whatever. And then last, seek support. I don't have to go on this journey to change boundaries and enforce boundaries alone. It becomes easier if I have somebody that I bounce things off. So partner with a friend. And so you might get what we call an accountability partner, somebody else in the group, and you say, I want to work on this. Are you working on this too? Could we share our experiences every day or every week? And I tell you how I tried to clarify my boundaries and what I said in certain scenarios, and you do the same. And we help each other come up with ways we could do it better, different, more easily. Does that make sense, everybody? So this is something, take a screenshot of this. You can write down your personal boundary plan. And this is just one thing. What's one boundary you feel at the end of this training you need to set? This is your first practice. What's one sentence that you might use to set it? And who is one person who can support you? If even a rough version of that is coming up, you could drop it in the chat. Aloma, I'm seeing you saying, yes, I need friends. You joined the special needs parent space, and granted, many of the parents in this space are silent people for now. It requires vulnerability to open up, yeah, with strangers. But a few people have been brave. Aloma and Radha being two of the big open speakers. So perhaps you all support each other, or you share a post and you say, here's what's going on and I'm working on my boundaries. What have you all done when this comes up? And see if other people have suggestions, yeah? So you start getting support and accountability. Yes, it requires vulnerability. It requires taking a risk. But then we grow friendships with people who are aligned with us. Yeah, people who are in similar situations. So you can drop your boundary plan in there if you want. So as we close, I just want to remind you, boundaries are not about controlling others. The other people may disagree. It might feel to them that you're trying to control them. Why has it disappeared? You all still seeing the screen?
Yeah, we're still seeing the screen.
The whole big screen, or it just went off?
No, I can see the big screen. I have the chats open, but I can see your screen.
Okay, it disappeared for me. Okay, it's back now. So boundaries are not about controlling others. They are about defining what you need and protecting what you need, right? So that you look out for your well-being. The three summary takeaways are, if we set good boundaries and enforce them, that will help us to reduce resentment and stress. It's okay if when you start setting boundaries or better boundaries, it feels uncomfortable at first. Everything when we are learning for the first time feels uncomfortable. You didn't even learn your timetables or how to say your ABCs without feeling uncomfortable. So it's just a sign that we're doing something outside of the routine. So just try. Practice makes perfect. And you often are kinder to others than yourself. So setting boundaries is evidence that you are starting to give yourself the same care that you give to others. I'd love to hear a little bit from you all. What's one insight or action that really stood out from today's workshop? What are you taking away from today? Tell me in the chat, please. I want to see if I made a difference through this workshop. Nikki says setting boundaries.
So thank you for your offer. Thank you for the services offered. It was very great and very informative.
Thank you, David, for being here. So I hope this gave you something to start with. I know in an hour, there's really only so much we can do in an hour. But if you got some tips that will help, that makes me happy. So the next steps are, pace yourself. You don't have to get from 1 to 100 in one day. Just start with one action and grow from there. 2, you don't have to be doing this alone. So I'd like to invite you, if you're not there already, to come into the special needs parent space. And you'll find a link to that space pinned at the top of my Facebook profile. And 3, if there are things coming up, reach out to me, send me a DM. But the people who are here already know that.
Marcia, David's just asking when your next session is.
So the next session is once a month, but since I didn't have one in February, I'll likely have another before the end of March. And I always post about it in my Facebook profile. So David, once you're following there, you should see when I have another event coming up.
And Aloma has just posted, I learned setting boundaries can relieve stress that keeps you from bottling up negative feelings.
Yeah. Oh, I didn't mention the reason for not having the February session was I had it scheduled for Carnival Thursday, which was last Thursday. And it occurred to me that people would want to go to Extempo and they would want to do the things related to Carnival. And so I would not get the people I wanted to attend necessarily being able to focus or being able to attend. So I put it off by a week into March. So the plan is every month to do one all the way through the year. And I hope you all will get value through that series.
Super great session, Marcia. Thank you so much. I got something out of that too. I'm like, huh. I'm also going to learn how to be more tactful because sometimes I'm not. I'll just say no.
Yeah, well, that's the point. We are allowed, we're not perfect, none of us. So some of us are too shy and some of us are too aggressive and some of us cry too easy. And you know what? Being too anything is not really true. That's just us. So stop judging yourself.
Yeah.
And start accepting yourself and then seeing how to fit in and let yourself just be. That's part of boundary setting too. Stop telling yourself you're too anything. Stop it. Accept yourself, be kind to yourself, love yourself. Start there.
Have you ever seen, there's a video actually that's called Stop It from Bob. It was a Saturday Night Live skit with Bob Newhart. Have you ever seen it?
No.
Okay, I'll send it to you on at a different time, but it may be something you want to show everybody because it's flippin' hilarious and it makes total sense. It's just
So
like,
maybe you
stop
want
it.
to share it in the Facebook group if you're up to it, the special needs parent space.
You know what? Yes, I can do that for you.
And that might be so much
So
fun.
funny, but it applies. It really does apply.
All right, wonderful people. Thank you
Thank
for
you so
showing
much.
up. Thank you for saving me from presenting to my face alone. And thank you for trusting me to be of support. I will see you all in the group. Tomorrow you all will get this recording in the group. You'll get a little cheat sheet and I'll be arranging to have a Q&A, a live Q&A so that we could get further questions at some point, maybe a few days down somewhere next week, so that people who have looked at the video and have other things coming up in the days to come will have somewhere to come back and say, well, I didn't think of this, but here's what I'm experiencing in the week since the training. What do you think? So I could give you a little more support there. All right, thanks so much. And I'll see you all for the next training or in the group or in the profile.